What's up and welcome back. I'm John Sarkomak from MovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and this is the 45th anniversary of the Muppet movie. I kind of wish I had known that or like had the presence of mind at the time so that I could have done this at the same time when I dropped the Jim Henson Idea Man review that I did. But that's also why I decided to watch it. I was like, oh, I just did the Jim Henson thing like 2 weeks ago. Let's get this out there. I found out that this was the 45th anniversary, and I was like, let's see. Oh, it has audio description on Disney Plus. Cool. Of course it does, because they own the Muppets now, so it's their franchise. It behooves them to put audio description on all the Muppet movies. I don't know if all the Muppet shows have audio description. I should find that out, but at least the movies do. So this is the OG Muppets. I didn't catch the audio description stuff at the end, but it really sounded like Laura Post to me doing her bright. I just don't know what company, and the company matters to me more. And then beyond that, the shenanigans of Disney. See, the thing about Disney is that I'm fully aware that Disney and audio description that they pass along like a list of do's and don'ts for what to include in their audio description, and it's really hard for me to hammer the audio description team for a Disney film because like I can talk about like because I know that they're not forcing maybe like the hiring of a specific voice talent. So I can talk about that. I can talk about whether or not somebody is right for the project, which I've talked about. But when I talk about like the actual like writing and things that don't work and what they could have done better, I don't know that they didn't do the best job they could based on what they were told to do. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, this might be the best case scenario possible, regardless of which company had done it, because they might have still been up against a wall with a list of writers, basically, keeping them from being able to do better audio description. It's not, I will say it's not my favorite audio description track, but I don't know that it's the fault of anybody who made the audio description. It might be. We'll talk about the things. And if you feel like I'm triggering you, if you made the audio description, if you feel like that this is your thing and you're like, oh yeah, my bad. Um, for example, I've seen the Muppet movie before, as probably have most people, but if you haven't seen the Muppet movie before, watch it. I don't know, it's 45 years old, and maybe it'll explain to you why the Muppets are such a big deal. This is back when Jim Henson and Frank Oz were actually involved still with the Muppets. This is before they gave any sort of control to Disney. This is when they were sort of independent and they were able to sort of have make the kind of movie that they wanted to make. Even though they don't have a writing credit slash directing credit on this, they were very much, I mean, these are Jim Henson's babies. This is his baby. He obviously, but he just wanted to be the puppeteer for certain puppets. It's amazing when you look at IMDb, by the way, and see all of the different puppets that each one of them voices. In case you actually don't know, like who voices who, it's really interesting to see each, and it's more than just those two. Um, like how many characters each one of them voices, and you're like, wow, those characters sound nothing alike. That's amazing. So really talented voice actors doing the puppetry for the Muppets. I love that at the very beginning we get the word Muppets without it being explained. So you have to have some sort of knowledge of what a Muppet is in order to understand that. I think probably most people do, but I'm also thinking this is a film that would be aimed maybe at little kids, and if a parent was trying to start their kids off with the Muppet movie as being like the first Muppet thing, you might want to tell your kids what a Muppet is, because it just kind of says it like a Muppet is on par with like an elf or a troll. So like something you might just already know what it is. And it's possible that your kid may not know what what a Muppet is. Some explaining might come in handy. Um, it doesn't totally bother me because, again, brand awareness. I kind of get that. I get why you would want to do that and not explain a Muppet and how do you explain it in the audio description. But it did make me think, uh, if we were coming at this and this was the first thing that we saw the Muppets in, would I know what a Muppet is if I had been congenitally blind from birth? And I don't know. It actually also kind of opens with Rainbow Connection, which is a beautiful song, by the way. I love that song. There are other songs throughout the film, but let's be honest and say just Rainbow Connection is the one that everybody remembers. So, lovely, lovely performance from Kermit on that song. Uh, it ends up being like a road trip movie slash chase. So Kermit and Kermit runs into Fozzie, who has a Studebaker. I think that's the name of the car, and they drive out. It's his uncle's Studebaker, by the way. He's only got the Studebaker while his uncle's in hibernation, and so they're on a road trip to go out to Hollywood to become famous. And along the way, they pick up other Muppets and then head out there. And so this is sort of like the really truly works as an introduction to the Muppets because you don't really have to know how they function as a group. You don't have to have seen like the Muppet Show or anything like that. You can just the Muppet movie works because they meet like Miss Piggy for the first time in this film. Like she's not already like obsessed with Kermit. Like at the beginning of the film, this has an introduction scene to her. So it really is a great starter film, which is why I'm thinking about like if you're a parent, just make sure your kid knows what a Muppet is. Just I don't know. Or be ready to answer the question, what is a Muppet? And think about that if your kid's watching the film. So road trip, they go on a road trip and they're being chased by a guy who wants Kermit for frog legs, which is really oddly morbid plot when you think about it. And but they want to go out to Hollywood. The Muppets want to go out to Hollywood. Kermit and Fozzie, and eventually, Piggy and Gonzo, and I can't remember the name of the chicken that Gonzo always has. And what is it, Schnookums, the giant hairy thing that comes in and out and is here, and we do see Statler and Waldorf, good lord, at the beginning of the film. They have like a little cameo. Actually, I think they're the first Muppet scene in the movie. Are those guys? And it's very meta. Like it references the fact that they are making a movie currently, especially with Dr. Teeth and the the whole band. Usually when they're in there, they're like, well, I don't know where we are. Well, why don't you check out the script? So they like read from the actual script to the movie, which is it's cute. It's funny. This isn't like my favorite film of all time, but it's kind of it was a nice kind of walk down memory lane, and it was like this is what 1979 was, and people just kind of made like it's a very kind film. It's a nice film. It doesn't play necessarily straight to kids in a way that like Sesame Street does, but it does play to general audiences. And oftentimes we think when we hear G, we go, "Oh man, that's for kids." Instead of just being like, I don't know that there's really anything offensive here. There isn't, they're not trying to do a whole lot of innuendo or anything like that. They're just trying to make a movie that is clean and is a well-told story, is cute, has its own things going on, has some funny moments, and it's just sort of lighthearted and makes you giggle. I don't know that you're gonna like laugh and roll in the aisles, but it'll make you smile, and I think that's good enough. Sometimes we just need kindness in the world. We just need a film that's just like gentle and happy and fluffy. My problem with the audio description is that sometimes the audio description is lacking on some of the Muppets. I'm thinking about this from the perspective of I don't know what a Muppet is. I've never watched a Muppet before because, again, this is a film that kids could watch. And if they're blind from birth and don't know and don't have the reference, what do these Muppets look like? It's, you get kind of a little bit of an easy one with Kermit the Frog and Fozzie Bear. I mean, those are kind of Miss Piggy, like, some of those help. But I thought Blue Gonzo being called a blue Muppet was a little lazy. I was like, "This is not really a great description for Gonzo." I mean, he is a blue Muppet, but so's Grover. So, what's the distinction between Gonzo and Grover? Because you basically just also described Grover. They're both blue, and they're both Muppets. So, uh, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's that kind of thing. The other thing about this film is, oh my god, the cameos. Oh my Jesus. This is one of the, um, if we had like a list of films with cameos where you just go, my God, the cameos in this film. You've got like Orson Welles and Richard Pryor and Bob Hope and Steve Martin, and you wouldn't know any of those people if unless you actually like have seen the film before or looked it up. So if you haven't seen this before, it's going to be really hard for you to pick up on all the cameos along the way, but there are a lot of them. There are some really heavy hitters that you just would not expect to see in a Muppet movie. I wasn't expecting Orson Welles in a Muppet movie. And this is early Steve Martin too, and I didn't remember where he was in the film. I don't know that many people would pick up on it because he doesn't really have a lot of lines. He's not pulling focus in the scene. That's the thing, is that most people just pull up. Um, One of the guys just kind of like sells balloons. Like they just kind of pop in and out. They're not really trying to take over the film, but there are a lot of really classic actors in this project, which makes it really cool. Um, to see all of the Madeline Kahn, a lot of people who aren't around anymore. So yeah, I think the fact that none of the cameos are acknowledged could be an interesting thing. It kind of reminded me of one of the problems I had with Rescue Rangers, the movie, is the fact that we had Disney went out of their way to get the rights to all those characters and to have Cartman from South Park and Beavis and Butthead and just like a thousand animated characters all over the place in that, in sort of like a Who Framed Roger Rabbit type thing, and then none of those made it in the audio description. There are videos listing hundreds of cameos, um, and none of them made it in the audio description. So, uh, yeah, that was really that really upset me, and I know that that was what Disney wanted for their script, but that is not creating. You're not building a bridge. You're not closing the gap for when we sit down with our families and we have side members in our families and we're trying to follow and understand a film, and meanwhile the people around us are laughing their asses off and we're like, what is it so funny? And they're like, oh yeah, we just saw Beavis and Butthead, and we're like, what? Like when you do that, you're creating a device of either that or else you think we all live in like some blind colony somewhere. If you do, I'm just gonna tell you, we don't. I do not live in a blind colony. So I need audio description that doesn't have rules against what to describe. Because I've heard other tracks for other films when there have been little cameos and it's been like an interesting cameo, like a by the way. I've heard them like name the actor before when it's a cameo that they want you to sort of know and recognize. And I think that's kind of what's happening here. Somebody went out of their way to get these actors. Orson Welles doesn't just show up for the Muppets just because, he wasn't like in an audition room and they were like, I don't know, it's either that guy we've never heard of before or Orson Welles for this role. I don't know. It's a tough call. Uh, no, they were obviously all asked to be here to do little cameos, or they wanted to do a Muppet thing. They liked the Muppets and they were like, oh yeah, we'd really like to work with Jim Henson in his Muppet thing. So that was kind of the point of the Muppet Show, was that celebrity guests came in and interacted with the Muppets And that's what they're doing in the Muppet movies. So the fact that these cameos aren't acknowledged and aren't recognized really kind of is a head scratcher for me. And I think it's coming out of Disney. I really think it feels like because and if it's not, that's your fault for creating the track record. You don't seem to like to acknowledge cameos and or references to other things, like with Rescue Rangers. So I feel like this is a totally valid thing, which means it's not really the fault of the audio description company. It's more the fault of likely Disney because of the kind of things that you create. So you have put yourself in this position. So I think this is Disney's fault for allowing this to happen and not just giving uh, their audio description teams, the ability to create the most, um, I don't know, immersive experience that we could possibly get. That brings us as close to being able to watch the film as possible. So I enjoyed this walk down memory lane. I don't want to say I'm like a huge Muppet fan. I actually think my like original intro to the Muppets, is like obviously like Sesame Street. So because of my age and everything, I didn't start with the Muppet Show. Obviously, when I saw the Muppet movie, it was in like either like a theatrical re-release or on video. I do remember Muppet Babies. I grew up with Muppet Babies, the OG Muppet Babies. Yeah, I remember that. Later on, there was that Muppets Tonight reboot that they tried for a while. But I've seen all the old Muppet movies before. And so this was a nice walk down memory lane. And the Big Bird cameo is adorable, by the way. So, yeah, have fun with this. 45 years of the Muppets on film. Pretty cool, huh? Anyway, that's it. Those are my thoughts. I'm gonna give the Muppet movie an A minus. It's not quite an A level for me, but I do think it's delightful. So yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side.